If a brain surgeon, someone who once denied all forms of belief, was the first to witness the truth beyond death, would you believe it? My name is Ethan Moore. I'm a neurosurgeon. I used to believe the human brain was the most complex biological computer in the universe, and that we, as human beings, were nothing more than byproducts of chemical reactions. I used to tell my patients, when the heart stops beating, that's it. There's no heaven, no afterlife, no light at the end of the tunnel. It's all just imagination. And then, I died. No, not a metaphorical death. I was clinically dead. My brain completely shut down for 7 days. 7 days without brain activity. 7 days without thought, without feeling, without memory. And in those 7 days, I was more alive than I had ever been. I used to tell my patients, when the heart stops beating, that's it. There's no heaven, no afterlife, no light at the end of the tunnel. It's all just imagination. And then, I died. No, not a metaphorical sense. I was clinically dead. My brain had completely shut down for 7 full days. 7 days with no brainwaves. 7 days without thought, without feeling, without memory. And during those 7 days, I was more alive than I had ever been. Why would an atheist be chosen to cross over into death? I used to believe that science was the pinnacle of all knowledge, that religion was just a spiritual crutch for the weak. The soul was a fairy tale concept. I had operated on thousands of brains and never once saw anything that could be called consciousness beyond the body. I was trained in sterile laboratories, surrounded by cold instruments. I believed in numbers, in statistics, in MRIs and EEGs. I believed that if something couldn't be measured, it simply wasn't real. I lived as a head without a heart. But sometimes the strongest beliefs become the tightest prisons. When I was 41, a rare case of meningitis caused my brain to swell to twice its normal size. It ate away at every fold, every electrical signal. I fell into a deep coma. My fellow doctors, my colleagues, shook their heads. They told my family it was time to let go. There's no recovery. His brain is gone. But just as the outside world was preparing to say goodbye, I was entering another world. It was a place with no sound, yet was full of music that I had ever known. Nobody, yet I could feel every atom in the air. I was floating, light as a feather. It was as if I had just shed an armor I didn't realize I'd been wearing for half my life. And then I began to feel. It wasn't just emotion. It was a knowing, profound and absolute. As if someone were whispering directly into my soul. You are not a doctor. You are not a body. You are love, learning to remember who you are. In that moment, I realized I had been wrong all my life. I used to say there's nothing after death. And now, it was that very nothing that held me more gently than any embrace I'd ever known. Memories began to fade. I no longer remembered my name. I no longer remember my wife, my children, surgeries, or hospitals. And somehow, I didn't need to. Because here, everything I had ever longed for was already present. Not in words, not in images, but in union, in oneness. I wasn't alone. I knew deeply that someone or something was there with me. It had no form, but it was real, more powerful than anyone I had ever known. And I called it the light. It didn't shine, it soaked into me. It didn't speak, yet it understood. It didn't teach, it awakened. Why am I here? I don't even believe in this place. And somehow, the light let me know. It's because you didn't believe that you were chosen. I wanted to scream, but there was no voice. I wanted to turn back, but there were no feet. I wanted to understand, but every concept of understanding dissolved into nothing. Only one thing remained: love. Not the kind of love you see in movies, but a field of energy that lifted me moment by moment. A love that needed no object, A love that knew everything I had ever hidden and still loved me. And do you know what the most terrifying part was? I didn't want to come back. I am a doctor. I used to believe that death was the end. But it was only after dying that I began to understand what it means to live truly. And that was only the beginning. Before I died, I was a man slowly killing himself day by day. There's a strange paradox. You only begin to truly see your life once it's over. Before I was clinically dead on paper, I was the embodiment of the American dream. A man who rose from a small town in Oregon, full scholarship to Harvard, the youngest neurosurgical resident in the program. But on the inside, I was hollow. No worse than hollow. I was frozen. I had learned to control my emotions the way I held a scalpel, precise, cold, and steady. When my wife, Laura, cried after her miscarriage that year, I just sat there, still holding a stack of patient charts. When my son, Aiden, who was only 12 at the time, asked me, "Dad, do you believe in God?" I answered plainly, "No, science is enough." I didn't kiss goodbye. I didn't ask, "Are you okay?" I didn't hug my son when he missed a basketball shot. I just played my part, the provider, the rational one, the best. Inside me, love had been replaced by responsibility. Faith had been replaced by evidence, and life had been replaced by a schedule. I had everything except peace. I woke up each morning to the sound of an alarm, not anticipation. I drove to the hospital, watching the city drift past my windshield like a silent film. I walked into the operating room, put on my gloves, and opened human skulls without once asking myself, could there be a soul within these gray folded ridges? Then one day I met Henry, a 36-year-old patient with terminal brain cancer. He looked at me, smiled in a strangely peaceful way, and asked, "Do you believe I'll see my mother after I die?" I glanced at his MRI scans and shook my head. "I'm sorry, there's no evidence of that, but you can rest assured we'll make sure you're not in pain." Henry nodded. Then he said something that kept me awake for an entire week. "You're a doctor, but you don't understand life. You're the one who's dying, slowly." I gave a faint smile in that moment, but deep inside, a small crack had opened. That night, I came home late. Laura was sitting in the kitchen, eyes red, hands clenched around an unsigned divorce paper. Aiden didn't run out to greet me like he used to. He stayed in his room. The door was closed. For a brief moment, I saw myself like a walking skeleton, lost in my own home. I could perform brain surgery to save lives, but I didn't know how to love someone. I didn't know how to forgive myself. I sat in my car, turned on the radio, and all I heard was silence. A small voice in my mind whispered, "Have I been living the wrong life?" I shook my head, turned the volume up, let the music drown out the doubt. I didn't know that just 1 week later, that question would be answered, and the price would be death. Henry asked me, "Do you believe I'll see my mother again after I die?" I told him no, but I was wrong. That was the last day I existed as Dr. Moore, the rational doctor, the man who denied the soul. Because the very next day, I collapsed in the bathroom. My body convulsed. My heartbeat became erratic. My wife screamed for an ambulance, and Aiden looked at me for the first time in years with eyes full of fear. I didn't get the chance to say I'm sorry, didn't get to say I love you, son, didn't get to hold my wife's hand. Only one final question echoed through my mind, like a fading reverberation. Does love truly exist? And then everything went dark, like someone had flipped a switch. Darkness, silence, a white, endless space, and a journey began. I died, but I didn't disappear. I broke apart, only to truly exist for the very first time. Why is it that when my brain had completely shut down, I felt more alive than I ever had? I remember that moment vividly, not with biological memory, but with the memory of the soul. I was lying on the bathroom floor, my body convulsing violently, foam spilling from the corners of my mouth, my eyes rolling back. Laura was screaming, Aiden was sobbing, crying out my name. But the real me was drifting through the ceiling, through the roof, beyond the sky itself. I floated into a place without color, yet it radiated brilliance. A space without sound, yet I could hear everything. And then I was no longer Ethan Moore. I was pure awareness. I had nobody, no name, no age, no past. But I knew I was in a place deeper than reality, more real than anything I had ever called real. It wasn't like heaven from books, no pearly gates, no angels. There was only light and rhythm. A gentle wave, like wind gliding across a still lake, lifted me. The sound was like a symphony, not played by instruments, but by emotion. I could hear love. I could touch forgiveness. I could smell the presence of peace. And I knew without any explanation that this place was not unfamiliar. I had been here before I came to Earth. I had simply forgotten. A presence approached me. It had no form, yet it was more real than any person I had ever known. I didn't hear a voice, but within me, a message echoed clearly. Welcome home. I used to tell my patients, there's nothing after death. But now I know that nothing holds everything I had ever been searching for. I began to fall, not in a physical sense, but as if layers of identity were being peeled away. My name fell. My profession fell. My achievements, titles, and positions felt like layers of dusty memory. I was no longer Dr. Moore. All that remained was a single question echoing through the white void. Who am I? And then I saw a garden, but not a biological garden. The grass glowed with light. The sky had no sun, yet light filled everything. At the center of the garden, there was a stone bench. I sat down, though I had no body. I didn't know why, but I felt safe. A presence sat beside me. This time it had a form, the form of a woman. Long hair, a gentle face, but eyes as deep as millions of light years. She looked at me with pure, unconditional love. And I realized she was my mother, but not my biological mother. She was mother energy, the essence of life itself. You have forgotten who you are, she said. You are light. You are love. You are a speck of the eternal. I broke down, not in tears, but in waves upon waves of overwhelming emotion. A presence sat beside me. This time it had a form, the form of a woman. Long hair, a gentle face, but eyes as deep as millions of light years. She looked at me with pure, unconditional love. And I realized she was my mother, but not my biological mother. She was mother energy, the essence of life itself. You have forgotten who you are, she said. You are light. You are love. You are a speck of the eternal. I broke down, not in tears, but in waves upon waves of overwhelming emotion. A presence sat beside me. This time it had a form, the form of a woman. Long hair, a gentle face, but eyes as deep as millions of light years. She looked at me with pure. The last memory I saw was of a newborn baby boy with eyes that seemed to be smiling. I knew, without a doubt, he was the child Laura and I never got to meet, the one who was never born. He came closer, said nothing, just placed his hand over my heart, though I had no body. Go back, he whispered. You're not finished yet, Dad. And I screamed, no, this is home. And the light responded with silence, gentle and kind. No force, only a sacred invitation. Choose to keep loving, or to stop. I don't remember making the choice. I only know that afterward, I fell, again. But this time, I fell back into the body. Cold, painful, rigid, suffocating. I opened my eyes. Laura was holding my hand. Aiden stood in the corner of the room, his mouth open in shock. I didn't say a word. I just cried. Not from pain, but because I had remembered who I truly was. What hurts more than death? Coming back alive while carrying memories of a world no one believes is real. When I opened my eyes after days lost in unconsciousness, the first light I saw wasn't the brilliance of the other side, but the harsh yellow glow of the ICU. The sharp sting of antiseptic filled the air. The steady beeping of the monitor echoed in the room, like a drumbeat quietly announcing that I was still alive. Laura sat by the bed, her eyes sunken from sleepless nights. Aiden huddled in the corner, his gaze filled with fear and distance. I wanted to hold them. I wanted to say, "I love you both," but my mouth was dry, my throat burned like fire. I heard myself whisper, I'm back." There was a silence, heavy as lead. No one knew where I had just been, and no one asked. The memory of that world of light remained vivid like a burn etched onto the retina. But around me, it was only the suffocating weight of reality. Doctors, nurses, IV lines, machines. I was a patient. I was a survivor. But deep in my soul, I knew I was also someone who had died. A part of me, the old part, proud, cold, and unfeeling, was gone. I closed my eyes, trying to hold on to the echoes of that place. The garden of light, the gentle mother, the feeling of being one with everything. But the harder I tried to remember, the further it drifted like a dream slipping away after waking. All that remained was an emptiness and one question clawing at my mind. How do you go on living once you've known there's a place more real than this? In the first days after waking up, I became a stranger to myself. Doctors came in to check reflexes, ask questions, and jot down notes. Friends sent messages of support. Colleagues sent flowers, but also reminded me of the surgery I had missed. Laura cared for me with tenderness and devotion, but her eyes couldn't hide the exhaustion or the doubt. And Aiden, my son, it was as if an invisible wall stood between us. He didn't hug me, didn't ask questions. He just watched me silently, from a distance. I realized I had lost more than I ever imagined. I had once been a gifted professor, a strict father, a quiet husband, a textbook example of American success. But after coming back, I was just a man who had been awakened, confused, and fragile. I cried alone every night. I didn't know whom I could tell about what I had experienced. I was afraid people would think I was delusional, or that my brain had suffered some kind of post-cardiac trauma. My body recovered slowly. I had to go through physical therapy, relearn how to balance, how to pronounce each word. In those lonely moments, I had only two choices. One, forgets everything and goes back to living the way I used to. Or two, face the memory, accept it, and find a way to make it part of me. But accepting it hurt just as much as dying. One night, Laura came and sat beside me. She asked, "You've changed. Where did you go, Ethan?" I stayed silent for a long time. Then, with a trembling voice, I finally confessed. "I don't know how to explain it. I died. I went to another place. In that place, every emotion, every pain was transparent. There, I saw myself weak, selfish, and cold. There, I felt your pain, our son's pain, the pain of everyone I had ever hurt." Laura looked at me, her eyes brimming with tears. She didn't cry. She simply reached out and held my hand in a trembling grip, part forgiveness, part heartbreak. Aiden didn't speak to me for weeks. One night, I passed by his room and saw the light still on. I knocked on the door. "Aiden, are you asleep?" He didn't answer. I hesitated, then said, "I'm sorry for everything." A moment later, his voice came through, barely more than a whisper. "Are you alive? Or is someone else just borrowing your body?" I didn't know how to respond. I just sank to the floor outside his door and cried silently. I tried everything to make sense of what I had experienced. I went back and read every medical study on NDEs, near-death experiences. I talked to colleagues, but all I received were skeptical glances and awkward smiles. Some said I had experienced neural hallucinations caused by oxygen deprivation. Others thought I was suffering from PTSD after the trauma. I sought out pastors, monks, and psychologists, but each had a different explanation. No one could answer the one question that consumed me. What is real? Who am I? The physical pain slowly faded, but the emotional pain only grew. I lived with a constant sense of disconnection, no longer belonging to the world I once knew, yet not fully adapted to the world I had returned to. I felt like a man standing between two cliffs. On one side, the cold past, where I was a successful doctor, but deeply alone. On the other, the memory of heaven, where I was part of light and love. And in between, there was only I, who lost, with nothing to hold on to. I kept asking myself, why was I sent back? Why didn't they let me stay? That question echoed over and over, haunting me each night in my loneliest hours. And with it came the sharpest memories. Aiden's disappointed eyes, Laura's cold, distant hand, the patients I had once turned away. I used to perform brain surgery on others. Now, I had to perform surgery on my soul. I began to meditate, to journal, to read spiritual books, and to meet with others who had gone through near-death experiences. I wrote, line by line, if I am no longer the Ethan Moore I once was, who am I now? If life is a series of lessons, what must I learn to be forgiven? What I lost wasn't my career or reputation. What I truly lost was my faith in myself. I no longer believed I was a good doctor, no longer believed I was a good husband or a father to be proud of. I had only one choice left, to begin again from the rubble. There were nights when I stared up at the stark white ceiling and asked myself, was everything I saw just a hallucination? I tried calling an old patient, Henry, name changed. His mother answered the phone. She told me Henry had passed away. I sat there in silence, and the tears just came. I remembered the question he asked me before he died. Do you believe I'll see my mother after I die? Back then, I said no. But now, I wish I could tell him. I'm not completely sure, but I've seen a place where every soul is held in the arms of light. But I can't say it anymore. Henry is gone. During the darkest days of my crisis, something unexpected began to happen. Aiden, after a month of distance and silence, walked into my room, sat down, and asked, "What did you see on the other side?" For the first time, I told him about the light, the garden, the feeling of being unconditionally loved, the mother, and the newborn child who brought me back. Aiden said nothing. Then he wrapped his arms around me tightly. He cried, and so did I. Laura quietly entered the room as well. She sat down and took both our hands, mine and Aiden's. 3 people, 3 wounds, 3 sorrows, sitting together in silence. And I realized, some things can't be healed all at once. But when we dare to face them, share them, and walk through them together, pain becomes a bridge, leading us into new life. I began sharing my experience with patients. Some laughed, some said nothing. But in a few, I saw eyes filled with gratitude and hope. I returned to the university, teaching with a different heart, less theory, more feeling. I attended gatherings of people who had died and come back. I offered comfort to those who had just lost someone they loved. I helped them face their fear. Laura slowly opened her heart again. Aiden began telling his friends, "My dad went to the other side and came back." I'm no longer the Dr. Moore I once was, and I'm far from some enlightened saint. I'm just a man who died and is learning how to live again. Every night, I still ask myself, was I given a second chance to learn how to love? I remember the whisper of the newborn child in the realm of light. "You're not done yet, Dad." And it's true, I'm not done. My life has just passed through the deepest valley, and now it's only the beginning to rise. Have you ever come back to life not to continue, but to begin something entirely new? It was a quiet afternoon. I was sitting on the porch, the sunset spilling across the world in velvet streaks of light. Aiden brought me a cup of tea and sat beside me. He didn't say anything. After a while, he asked, "Dad, if you came back to life for a reason, what do you think that reason is?" That question was simple, unassuming, and cut through every layer of my logic like a blade. I sat in silence for a long time. Then I answered, softly, "To live, as someone who knows how to love." I returned to work not as a university professor, but as a storyteller. In every lecture, I wove in pieces of my spiritual experience, not as doctrine, not to convince anyone, but simply to share. At first, some students scoffed, some colleagues rolled their eyes, but then a few stayed behind after class, tears in their eyes, asking, "How do I stop being afraid of dying? Will I see my loved ones again? Is it true that love is enough?" I didn't have exact answers. I just told them about the embrace of light, about the wordless garden, about the newborn child who called me back. And slowly, they began to sit in silence, the same way I once did. Silence to understand, silence to cry, silence to begin again. Laura slowly came back to life. She began painting again, her art now filled with more light, softer, more tender. One day, she painted a piece titled "The Return." It showed a man emerging from a tunnel of light, holding a porcelain heart, cracked, but glowing from within. I stood before the painting, speechless. Laura walked up beside me and whispered, "I painted you, and me." Aiden began studying philosophy. One evening, he said to me, "Dad, philosophy asks all these questions like, why do we live? What is life? But I think the only question that matters is, am I brave enough to live truthfully?" I held him in my arms for the first time in years, and in that embrace, I understood. I don't need to become someone better. I only need to become someone who can love without fear. I became part of a community of people who had experienced NDEs, near-death experiences. Every gathering was a time to cry and a time to heal. Some had attempted suicide. Some had been in a coma for months before waking. Some were war veterans. Each story was a testimony, a witness to a love that defied all logic. And I came to understand, no one comes back the same, but all of us bring back the same thing, love. I began writing a book, not a book about science, but a book for those who had lost faith, lost loved ones, or lost themselves. I started speaking in hospitals, in prisons, in nursing homes. Wherever there was darkness, I went, with a heart no longer afraid of the night. I didn't bring evidence. I brought only one message, the one I received from the other side. We weren't born to understand everything. We only need the courage to love, and the humility to accept that we're still learning how to live. It was an early spring night. A light rain fell, like the whisper of the universe. I was standing outside the hospital, a cup of cold coffee in my hand. Laura was in the delivery room. My heart beat slowly, trembling. Not out of fear, but because I felt something sacred was about to happen. Then a cry, high, pure, a sound that seemed to tear through space, calling me back to this place, the place of life. I rushed inside. A nurse smiled and gave me a reassuring look. "Congratulations, a healthy baby boy." I stepped up to the bassinet. He was so tiny, wrapped in a white blanket. His eyes were still closed, but his lips curled ever so slightly as if smiling. I looked at my son, and suddenly I realized that the very light I had once seen on the other side was now in my arms. No longer a vision, no longer a longing, but real, living, here. Laura turned to me, exhausted but radiant. "What do you want to name him?" I whispered, "Daniel. It means God is my judge, because this life is a gift that needs no proving. I once left this world like a helpless newborn. Now I return holding a child, holding the very light I once saw." Daniel is not just my son. He is the embodiment of love, forgiveness, and miracles. He is a living answer to those who have ever asked, "Is there anything after death?" Yes, there is life. Life goes on. There are still rainy days, still moments of anger and disappointment, still times when I feel lost. But this time, I no longer struggle like I used to. I accept it all, like waves. I let them come and go. I've learned to live more gently, more slowly. And every time I find myself slipping back into old emotions, I'm no longer afraid. I smile and say, "Ah, I'm walking through a familiar loop, but now I know how to step out."